Yet again, liberal CNN contributor Leigh McGowan gloriously shut down the bad faith MAGA talking points of her Republican co-panelists, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got a couple of clips to play here. Leigh McGowan, aka PoliticsGirl, is a political commentator. I believe she's affiliated with Midas Touch, as well as, being an increasingly visible contributor on CNN. She is an excellent political commentator. She became famous during COVID, recording political commentary from her kitchen. She's extraordinary at what she does, really cutting through the BS and into the heart of the matter. And she does it yet again. There's a reason CNN is having her back on. They might as well have her pull up a chair for every panel they have. She's so good at it. We're going to play these clips and unpack it together.
Here's the thing. I think it's weird that we're asking Kamala to answer for what Joe Biden said, but we're not asking Trump to answer for what Trump says, right? Like, this is the thing. We're talking about garbage. He's cosplaying as another working class person. But his quote, he's quoted, I mean, you see him at the end of that quote, but his quote from Wisconsin was, "It's not her, it's the people around her. They're scum, they're absolute garbage." And that's Donald Trump himself saying that. So why we're 2 days later talking about something that Joe Biden did where he tripped over his words, then corrected himself right away on Twitter, we're still talking about it 2 days later, but we're not talking about someone who says, we're scum, we're absolute garbage. Like, I don't know what we're doing.
He said that and a lot more. I'll play it in a minute, but go ahead.
Yeah, well.
So again, this is what makes Leigh so good at what she does, because, we all harp on the double standard here, and I think correctly so, because it's really frustrating to see that Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are graded on a curve. Republicans are desperate to make this, garbage comment by President Biden still stick. They're desperate for anything to distract from the Puerto Rico comment made by a pro-Trump comedian at his Madison Square Garden rally. And in so doing, they're just keeping that story alive as well. But again, she's right. President Biden is not the nominee. If you really think that Donald or President Biden was demonizing MAGA Republicans or all Republicans in general, one thing you should take solace in is whatever the outcome of the next election will be, he's not going to be in office, okay? Vice President Kamala Harris is the Democratic nominee, and why is she somehow responsible for what Donald Trump says, but Donald Trump is not responsible for what prominent MAGA Republicans say or what even he himself says? And the fact of the matter is he does demonize Democrats, liberals, progressives, people in blue cities, blue states, the media. He demonizes his critics and his political opponents far more than Vice President Harris does hers, or the Democrats do theirs, as Abby Phillip makes a point to point out here.
I want to play this because I think it's very instructive what you're talking about. Okay, Joe Biden said what he said, but this is Donald Trump all along.
My response to Joe and Kamala is very simple. You can't lead America if you don't love Americans. You just can't. And you can't be president if you hate the American people. And there's a lot of hatred. It's the people that surround her. They're scum. They're scum. And they want to take down our country. They are absolute garbage.
Any Jewish person that votes for her, especially now, her or the Democrat Party, should have their head examined.
It's the enemy from within. All the scum that we have to deal with that hate our country, that's a bigger enemy than China and Russia. Any African American or Hispanic, and you know how well I'm doing there, that votes for Kamala, you got to have your head examined, because they are really screwing you.
This is the reality of the race that we are in. It's not in a vacuum. And Trump he's just not the poster child for respecting people on the other side of the aisle.
But
He's not. And again, this is my point. And I think I can't speak for Leigh. I've never met her, but I imagine she would say the same thing. It would be one thing if Republicans sincerely held a high standard for their political, candidates, or just political candidates and politicians in general. But you should hold Republicans to the same standard too. If you're a Republican and you're upset about when Democrats occasionally say things that you find offensive, fair enough. And you're free to call them out for it. But you're really unprincipled and hypocritical. And I think I think you have no credibility if you don't hold your same standards to your politicians. So this is the point. To hear a Trump supporter clutch pearls and say, oh, President Biden insulted us. Well, number one, again, as Leigh McGowan points out, President Biden corrected himself on Twitter, said explicitly, listen, this is not what I meant to say. Here's what I meant to say. Okay. This is what I meant. I was referring to a specific Trump supporter, Tony Hinchcliffe, the comedian. Donald Trump doesn't do that. When Donald Trump attacks people, he doesn't issue a clarification going, hey, listen, in the heat of the moment, I know how this sounded, but I was actually referring to this specific Democrat. I was referring to this specific person. And I don't want you to think that I think about that about all Democrats or most Democrats. He could have done that, but he never does. He only ever doubles down. And it's left to, prominent Trump supporters to try to defend him and say, actually, okay, I know he said this, but that's not what he meant. And Republicans demand the benefit of the doubt that they never give to Democrats as they try to apply asymmetric standards. Another clip from this panel with Leigh McGowan.
Make a point that Democrats have been calling him a fascist and other names for a long time. There's plenty of blame to go around.
Republicans too.
Hold on a second.
A fascist is not a name. A fascist is a bunch of things that add up to a way of being.
Yeah,
They're calling him a fascist because he's behaving like a
I
fascist.
agree with that.
Because he's talking about poisoning the blood of the nation, and because he's talking about rounding up political enemies, and because he's acting like a demigod, and because he's saying the rules don't apply to me, and because he's saying I'm going to close up the free press, I'm going to close your schools if you don't do what I say. He's acting like a fascist. That's why we're calling him a fascist. He's saying people are scum because he thinks they're scum, not because they are.
You will never make a point that.
Again, she's so good at this. And I think the thing that I really like about Leigh compared to a lot of other liberal commentators, and this is something I struggle with myself, is she just cuts through the BS. Like, she interrupted that guy, and she should have, because he was creating a false equivalence and he was misrepresenting the truth. And she just refused to, quote unquote, wait her turn. She's like, no, this is insane. And she wasn't rude when she did it. She didn't insult him. She didn't scream at him. She's like, wait, what you just said isn't true. Here's why Donald Trump is referred to as a fascist, often by conservatives and Republicans as well, not just by, Democrats. It's because he behaves like a fascist. And if he doesn't want to be called a fascist, then perhaps he shouldn't behave like one. And perhaps if he didn't behave like one, so many of his own former supporters wouldn't be referring to him as a fascist. And you can tell that, that Republican commentator was, really upset by the fact that she cut him off, but she takes no prisoners. And I love it. And she does it, again, without being rude, but she just cuts through the BS and really into the heart of the matter. And I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing her so frequently on CNN, because she would occasionally appear just recently. And now it seems like clockwork. It seems like we can't go 48 hours without seeing PoliticsGirl on there. And I'm glad. And I think CNN is better for it. Love it. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.